The era of the quarantine hair is kind of over. We cut our own hair today. It's not perfect at all, but it's way better than dealing with the shaggy mess I had before. The curls are gone, but they'll be back, especially since this may be one of only few videos I record for a couple months as I release scheduled content and things going on in life. But this week I got the GoXLR stand in the mail. Finally, I've been waiting for this thing since December of 2019. It has finally arrived. There were a lot of delays with shipping and some confusion where Amazon marked an order as a shipment to them as shipped. It didn't show up, and then COVID added a bunch of delays on top of that. But I have my first one in. I also ordered one from B&H because I was hearing that people were getting them sooner. That one still hasn't even shipped yet. It's still on back order, but it's here, and I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to answer some questions about it, but I didn't feel like it deserved its own video necessarily. So I'm gonna answer your questions that I pulled you guys about the GoXLR itself and the stand. We're just gonna all smoosh it into one GoXLR update video. Sound good? Let's go. I'm EposVox, your stream professor, and the GoXLR stand is obviously a stand for the GoXLR. It's a kind of metal clamp system. It's virtually identical to the Elgato Stream Deck stand, except made of metal and a lot bigger for the GoXLR itself. This was not originally created when the GoXLR was created, and in fact, I have the information that basically the like higher ups who made the GoXLR didn't even think people wanted it very much, which is why they opened this originally in a limited pre-order run fashion, because they didn't think the interest would be very high for it. And it turned out there was a lot of demand for it, which is part of why there's so much delay. It costs about 40 bucks, which is pricey to some, but given the price of the GoXLR itself, it's not that much. And given what you are getting materials wise, it makes sense. It is $40. It is all metal. It is incredibly heavy. It is rock solid. And you get an inline power switch as well, which I have right here set up in infinite power mode at the moment. I had a couple questions asking if I felt bad about paying $40 for something that should have been included. The GoXLR itself is already angled up. It's already angled in a way where you don't need a stand to use it. The stand for me was more of a cable management thing because the way I have my cables run on mine is a little awkward, and I have a angled XLR cable come out of it because I ordered some custom XLR cables and I put the angled in on the wrong end of the cable. And so I can't even sit the GoXLR flat because of that. And so I had it sitting on a box and I just wanted it for that. The inline power switch is a little goofy. They should have put a power switch directly on the device, IMO. So it is a little goofy that you have that separately and that's part of the package, but I'm glad they're including it rather than just doubling down and not including one at all. They did, however, introduce a software update at some point that introduced sleep profiles, so you can put it to sleep too, but that may also only work when the computer's on. I'm not sure now. As I mentioned, it is extremely heavy. It is made of all metal. It has some thick rubber pads on the bottom to keep it from sliding on your desk. The weight alone will help it do that. And then the entire top part that the GoXLR actually attaches to is a big giant rubber pad as well. So that thing is going nowhere. And I honestly wish the Stream Deck stand was as rugged as this one, because the Stream Deck I can still make slide around, at least the original one. The XL mostly stays in place, but my GoXLR is not budging a bit. And I get it to basically have it completely, perpendicular to my desk so that I can see everything. And the main advantage of actually propping it up on a stand like this is the stupid screens on that thing are impossible to see under normal use unless you are directly above it. This getting it flat means I can actually see and use the screens now for the first time in the entire time I've had the GoXLR. So that's pretty cool. It's got gaps in the flaps to hold the GoXLR where the cable runs are in case you are still running your headphone cable underneath it or something like that. That's fine. And it has 4 to 5 different positions that you could use it in. And again, it's like the GoXLR. It has little hooks and you put the metal clamp in and it holds it in place and keeps it from sliding around. I say 4 or 5 because there's technically only 4 that have the little notch in it for the rod to go into, but the 5th one is just cut vertically and you can still technically use that if you want it even further. There might just be a risk of the GoXLR eventually like flopping forward if you kick your desk too much or something. So that's it. That's the GoXLR stand. I don't think it was too expensive. $40 is a pretty reasonable price for it. It is built way better than I expected, especially after the Stream Deck stand, and I get the convenience of a power switch for me to turn off the lights if desired. So I'm happy with it. I just wish I would have gotten it 4 months ago rather than now, but that's fine. I do have a second one coming for my retro room setup because I use 2 GoXLRs. So hopefully I'll get that one in as well. I did have some questions from you all about the GoXLR itself, and I wanted to go ahead and answer them because I've had a lot of questions over time. So I went through my previous comments that I could search through and find relating to GoXLR at all to answer some questions. And then I posted both on Twitter and the community tab. Go follow me on Twitter, by the way, asking if you had any specific questions about the GoXLR. There is the obvious one about whether or not you can use it with the Shure SM7b. That's what I've been using for desktop tutorials and my streaming for a few weeks now. Actually, I think it's been a month and a half now. Hard to keep track in quarantine. I don't think we're going to see AV1 right now. It's going to take a couple years for AV1 to really take hold. There's no content, and there's very little content in AV1. There's not, the technology for it isn't quite here yet, but I will have some more content about AV1 coming in the future. Works great. I set it to, I believe, 50 to 55 dB of gain. You want it to where you don't clip outside of the red at all. You want most of your peaks to be in the green, and maybe if you're yelling a lot, it to maybe start touching the top of the red. But you need to set your gain based on the peaks, and the preamps are the Midas preamps in the GoXLR. These are different from something in the interface like the UMC 204 HD, which has Midas designed preamps. Those are preamps designed by the Midas people for a lower cost, whereas the preamps in the GoXLR are full-fledged Midas preamps, which are supposedly quite a bit better. It's splitting hairs as to how that wording is, but these preamps are significantly better than what you find in most, especially budget audio interfaces, and they are more than qualified for providing clean gain for your GoXLR. A lot of interfaces only provide a certain amount of clean gain, and then they get into digital gain, and it gets kind of messy from there, and a Focusrite 2i2 or Solo, for example, cannot provide enough gain for an RE20, which is already a gain-hungry mic, but not as gain-hungry as the SM7B, nevertheless, the SM7B. And yes, for those of you who want to point it out, both Midas and Behringer and TC Helicon are all owned by the same parent company, but that doesn't mean Behringer is just making everything for each of those companies. It's not really how it works. But yes, you can use it with an SM7B just fine, get great sound out of it, and preamp it without anything else. Works great. The next question I got was how to use the GoXLR with an external DAC amp combination, like something from Shit Audio for like the Magni or Modi. I've actually got the new Fulla 3 and the Hell in for review that I've been working on that you could use it with and things like that. For the most part, the only way to really make it work is either, which is also what was asked for, how to use it for a USB headset as well, either enable listen on the broadcast stream mix device in Windows and tell it to listen through to your other audio device. You can hear it there. Seems silly, but it's the lowest latency option. If you do audio monitoring through OBS, there's a lot of latency added with that. Or to use the line out on the back of the GoXLR and run that to the analog line in on your amp and use it that way. But again, you are bypassing some of the advantages there, but you're doing that when you're using both anyway. Speaking of which, I also got a question whether or not this could drive good headphones. Yeah, I've had zero problems driving my HG6XX, the 58X, my, what are they? The Behringer Dynamics DT990, the 600 ohm version. No problems there. I also have now the Monolith M1060, and I haven't had any major issues driving that either. So personally, I don't think you need it unless you are just trying to go full audiophile, in which case I'd recommend just honestly switching. Like I have my media player set specifically only to output audio to my shit audio DAC, and I just have a separate headphones plugged into that personally, but you can do whatever you want. So that's the way I do it, because I don't think it's worth it to me to run the GoXLR, then into the amp, then to my headphones. Like I'm not using headphones that require that much driving, and my headphones are fairly expensive, but that's just me. I got a question about whether you should connect the GoXLR or the Mini to your gaming PC or streaming PC. This specific person said all of the videos said you should connect it to your gaming PC, but then you can't use the Stream Deck to interact with the GoXLR. Personally, I think it makes most sense to use it on your streaming PC, where you then have all the individual audio devices to mix and monitor within OBS. That makes the most sense. That way, if you want to do separated multi-track recording, you can, because if it's plugged into the gaming PC, you can't do it that way. The only advantage to doing it in the gaming PC directly is separating in-game voice chat from your game sound. I don't use in-game voice chat pretty much at all. I use Discord, and so with Discord, which by the way, join our server, eposvox.gg/Discord. With Discord, I just have it running on my streaming PC, have it running to the separate chat device, and use it that way. So I recommend keeping your GoXLR on your streaming PC, manage all of your audio devices there. That gives you more flexibility in recording, and then you can connect it to your gaming PC using the line in, line out method or whatever. And then the Stream Deck has no problem interacting with the GoXLR. So something I missed about the GoXLR update that will actually help people asking this question is if you go to the global settings in the Stream Deck app, and then you have an option for Stream Deck on non-GoXLR PC. So that means your Stream Deck is running on the opposite PC. So if the GoXLR is on your gaming PC, your Stream Deck's on your streaming PC, you check that, and then you type in the host name of the computer that you're running the Stream Deck on. So you can get that to, if you go to My PC and Explorer and right-click it, go to Properties, under System Information Computer Name. So for this one, it's Tyranitar. You would type that in, and assuming all the permissions are set up and the plugins properly installed, which, you know, you have it here. Got a question about whether you should choose the Mini or the full-size GoXLR, and how bad the USB connection is on the Mini, since it's not it's not wall-powered like the GoXLR is. So with the USB connection, there are some issues where certain USB ports or all USB ports, whenever you pull too much power while gaming, may have some connection dropout issues with the GoXLR Mini. I ran into this at first when I was reviewing it pre-release, and they ended up fixing a lot of those issues with the software over time. Especially like even the launch software fixed a lot of those issues, but they do recommend when troubleshooting this to actually, even though this goes against all of my normal advice for USB hubs, to connect it to a powered USB hub where you then have consistent power going to it, even if the data connection fluctuates a little bit. So you can try that as well. But overall, I don't see it being a significant issue. And I've personally never had any interference or anything like that issues with the GoXLR's USB connection or the Mini. And I have a lot of other analog audio related interference and EMI problems overall. So I don't consider it to be a big deal. Whether or not you should choose the GoXLR or the GoXLR Mini, between them comes down to what you actually want out of it. They're at the core functionality between them is the same. You get the multi-device options in Windows, and you get the line in, line out, headphone out, optical, microphone input, and you get the real-time processing. What you don't get is the voice effects for reverb and doing cool voices, and the sampler. So if you just need basically a glorified audio interface with those extra, it's basically an audio interface and a mixer in one with some processing handled on the hardware as well, go for the Mini. If you want to do sampler memes and things like that, then go for the full. But for most people, you probably only want the Mini, and that's fine. It's a lot cheaper. Got another question about monitoring with headphones that aren't connected to the GoXLR. Again, go right-click your speaker icon, go to sound settings, maximize that, go to sound control panel, go to the recording tab, find your broadcast stream mix, right-click it, properties, go to the listen tab, enable listening, select the device or the headphones that you actually want to hear it out of, and it'll just route all of the audio to the broadcast stream mix out to your headphones so you can hear them there. But do keep in mind, if you add the audio device for your headphones as a desktop audio device through something else like OBS, then you'll get an echo because it's playing both to the GoXLR device and your headphones. So you don't want to add your headphones as a desktop audio device in OBS. You want to route all of your system through the GoXLR, and then basically nothing is set to actually use your headphones other than that listen section in Windows' sound settings. Hope that makes sense. Do you need to pair the GoXLR with other audio hardware, such as a FedHead, a cloud lifter, or the DBX286S? IMO, no, that doesn't make sense. You don't need the FedHead or cloud lifter. The preamps are good enough for any mic you're realistically going to be using with it by a long shot. And then the DBX286S is a channel strip, which does a lot of the real-time processing. It has a sort of EQ. It's not great, but it has an EQ, it has a compressor, it has a noise gate, all built into it. That's what the GoXLR does. So it would be redundant to do that together. So I wouldn't waste your money for that, because that defeats the purpose of getting the GoXLR. Got a couple questions regarding how does it compete with other preamps, and is it worth 5 times the cost of another basic audio interface? And if literally all you want is an audio interface, then no, probably not, because you can get an audio interface that works with your microphone and doesn't cost $500 right now. But it's not just an audio interface. You're not just buying an audio interface if you buy the GoXLR. It's an audio interface. It's a mixer. It's a mixer with multiple virtual Windows, WDM audio devices, which are very expensive. The cheapest other one I've found is $500. You're getting a real-time DSP processor with vocal effects and actual compression, EQ, noise gating, de-essing, things like that on your microphone. You're getting really high quality preamps in that audio interface. And if you're getting the full size GoXLR, you're getting a sampler pad and you're getting extra voice effects. So you're paying for all of these things in one, and that price is definitely worth it in most cases if that's what you're interested in. As far as I can tell, it competes with other preamps just fine. Like unless you're buying dedicated expensive mic preamps, I mean, it competes with virtually any audio interface you're gonna be connecting your microphones to for the price as well. Why do profiles not save microphone settings? So my gut reaction was, I don't know. I've actually asked this question before, and I was told at one point that mic profiles were actually coming at some point. They haven't yet, but I think the main reason that they don't do it that way is because they have people who switch profiles just to get more banks of samples, and that's even more of the case with the Stream Deck plugin, is you can use the Stream Deck plugin to then basically every button is 3 more banks of sound samples, and they have a lot of people who use it as a sampler pad in that way, so they don't want mic settings getting screwed up between all of the profiles. I do think it's pretty annoying because then you can't really set up multiple microphone profiles at all, but I was told at some point last year that it was coming. I don't know if that's still true. Had quite a few questions about how to use it with RTX Voice. The problem with this is you can't do it and still use the broadcast stream mix, because the way RTX Voice works is it takes your microphone signal, processes it, and outputs it to another audio device. And so that second virtual audio device is not going to be included in your broadcast stream mix because the GoXLR only uses its own devices. So you would have to add that as its own device and not use the broadcast stream mix device. You'll have to use your separate chat, game, system, sound devices and add them all together and use the RTX Voice microphone device instead of the chat mic device. And this is why a couple people mentioned that if they used RTX Voice, then the sampler pad doesn't work and things like that. Yeah, that's the problem. And there's no real way around that. Like, it'll be a little bit more convenient when Zaymar is actually developing a VST plugin for it, which will work in real time in OBS and basically any streaming software. You'll also be able to use it in video editors and audio editors. That'll make it a little easier because then you can just apply it to a mic device and not have to add a separate device for it. But you'll still not be able to use it with multiple inputs going to the same output because it will start to filter out a lot of that extra sound. That's kind of the point though. But you don't need that with a GoXLR in most cases because it already has a noise gate. So treat your environment and use the noise gate properly. Who is the GoXLR for and who is it not for? It's for people who are streaming, who are doing it at the moment, a single PC stream, who want a lot of control over their voice, over their processing, who wants it done on hardware and not in software in using up your CPU cycles and processing power, and to be able to monitor it in real time so that it's used in your voice calls as well as your live streams. And someone, at least in the full size, who wants to have voice samples and clips and memes to play in real time and do funny effects and things like that. It's not for musicians in most cases. You can sort of, I had someone ask the question, you can sort of run a guitar amp to the line in 3.5 millimeter input, but it may not be a great experience and the voltages might not match up if your amp isn't outputting line level signal and you don't have other XLR inputs. And it's also not for interviews or multi-person podcasts because currently it only has one input. So that's the multi-person show / podcast scenario is something that the Rodecaster Pro is probably more for. And they actually just announced or released a beta, I think, that has real-time effects for like compression and EQ and stuff on it, which is pretty cool. But that's more or less who it's for. It's, as I said in my review, for single or dual PC streamers, but like single person streamers. Had a couple questions about the software because I mentioned in my review I had a lot of complaints with the software and specifically with the headphone delay being kind of annoying. They fixed that almost right away. It was over the summer after my review came out. That has been fixed, and that was the deciding factor in me switching from my mixer back to the GoXLR full time. They did fix that, and the software has improved a little bit and quite a bit, a little bit and quite a bit. A little bit in some ways, like adding in new features. They haven't done a ton of that, but they've added in a few new features, like the advanced muting thing, developed the Stream Deck plugin, and then it's improved quite a bit in terms of stability and the general usability that I complained about in my review. With the software, someone asked if the sliders can still only go to predefined places for like EQ, compression, things like that. You can type in a number for a lot of things, like your compression threshold and your attack ratio and things like that. But depending on what the scale you're at, what scale of the number that you're at, you're still limited in certain things. Like the multi-band EQ, you can only use each band in a certain way. They added the fine-tuning support, but you can only fine-tune so much in a certain direction. So you're still limited on the groups of bands that it can use. And then like your attack and release time, you can only input certain ranges. So it jumps from like 0.002 ms to like 2 ms, and you don't have any room in between. So that's kind of frustrating. I'm guessing that's a limitation of its internal DSP. I don't know. Someone asked what the quality is like compared to other options. Overall, it's pretty great. I think it's going to sound much better than the cheaper onboard EQ or compressors, because one of my mixers had a compressor that your mixers have on board. Like those are usually not super great. They're just kind of there to have, super basic. I think it's going to sound better than that overall. But when you compare like the compressor, like I think the EQ is fine other than not being able to fine tune it quite as much as I'd like. I'm actually using the basic EQ at the moment because I got so frustrated with it and I got a sound that I wanted out of the basic view where you only have 3 bands of the EQ, that I'm using that anyway. But specifically the compressor, I keep having trouble with. I feel like it just sounds a little too, not digital, but like almost a little too thin compared to what I want it to sound. And compared to something like the multi-band compressor built into Adobe Audition, which is basically a compressor over top of an EQ at the same time, because it's a compressor at each given frequency range that you define. I use that on this microphone right now. It sounds freaking phenomenal. I can't replicate that sound, at least very easily, or at all really, with the compressor and EQ in the GoXLR. And the compressor itself sounds fine, but I think it could use something else. I don't know. Compared to like true, high-end post-processing compressors, it's not going to sound amazing. But compared to like my DBX286S or the onboard stuff on most mixers, IMO it competes and is fine. Someone asked how I prefer to use it with game consoles. I have all of my game consoles and my second PC run into a 4-input optical SPDIF switch, and I just run that into the optical port on the GoXLR. Works great for me. Someone asked why it's so expensive. Because it's got expensive hardware in it. And import taxes apparently caused the price to go up. Someone asked why it doesn't have 2 XLR jacks. I was hearing rumors that they were developing one that did, but overall, it doesn't exist yet a year later. I guess it's been almost 2 years since it's come out now. As far as the initial release, that was actually one of my gut complaints about it. I was like, for something that says you should go like I'm pretty sure I said this verbatim in my review at some point, but for something that says you should go XLR, it only has 1 XLR port, which doesn't seem to be a big celebration of XLR, which they want you to go. But overall, it's intended for one-man show or one-woman show, live stream, single piece. I keep saying single PC, but I mean single person live stream scenarios that don't involve other people. Not really meant for 2 people, but I think they're working on something else that might fit that better. Nothing's 100% set in stone though. Why is there a shortage of them? The same reason there's a shortage of every other electronic and especially streaming related, webcam, capture card, microphone kind of thing at the moment. Have you looked at the news since February or December? Had a question on how to control headphone volume separately. So upstairs in my retro room setup, I actually use a dedicated fader to control the headphone volume, and that works fine, but you do sacrifice a fader for it. That is pretty frustrating. I said in my review, I wish they had a dedicated headphone dial on the device, and I think it's pretty bonkers that they left it off. However, at my desk setup here, I do already run all of my headphone stuff. I have 1 headphone line out coming out of it to a dedicated headphone amp it is the Behringer HA400. It's a 1 to 4 out headphone splitter, and that's how I do like my headphone AB comparisons when I'm testing headphones and things like that. It's good enough, and so I control headphone volume independently there. But otherwise, your only real option is the slider or in the software, or just control it through Windows, but then that affects your actual mix as well. Someone asked if the power switch will be sold separately. I've not seen any hint of that. Would probably be cool, but I doubt it. You don't really need it, but I doubt they're gonna separate it out like that. But specifically, someone asked they said they had the Mini and they just want the power cord. They can't use the stand because they're using the Mini. The Mini isn't wall powered. The Mini is USB powered. So it turns off when your computer goes off already, and you can't use an external power switch for it because it's only connected to USB. Like technically you could find the power lines in a USB plug and route it to your own switch and solder that in there. I've seen people do that, but that's silly. And also there's, it's supposed to turn off when your computer does. And either way, it's got a sleep mode too. Oh, and I had a question about turning the LEDs off when the PC is off. The big one doesn't because it has external power, so you either need the switch or, like I said, the software does have a sleep mode. I haven't tested whether that works when the computer is off, but I can't. I feel like it would be silly if it didn't, but you could at least set it to sleep mode before you turn off your computer if you needed to. Question on how to use wireless headsets with this. If you're using a USB wireless headset like the Corsair Void Pro Wireless, that's what I wanted to use upstairs in my retro room. You can't use it directly because it only has a USB plug that connects to it. So you'll have to use the Windows Listen method. If you have something like the SteelSeries Arctis Pro Wireless or the SteelSeries H Wireless that has a little hub to it, then you can run the line out of your GoXLR into the analog in of your hub and then play it that way, which is, I have the origins of the Arctis Wireless. It's called the H Wireless from SteelSeries upstairs, and do it that way. Someone asked why it doesn't have two USB ports or plugs for using on dual PC. Well, this is something that didn't really exist until like this past year, dual USB host. It's kind of like the pot of gold for product development. I've only seen one audio product ever that has it. It is not common. It is incredibly difficult and expensive to make from what I can tell, or else it would be more common. So it's a version 1. Lastly, I got a weird question asking, does this do everything the MixPre-3 II does, which is my sound recorder that I'm using right now and reviewed on the channel? No, they are completely different products. The MixPre-3 II is a sound recorder that records to SD card. It also works as an audio interface, but it primarily is a field recorder. It has 32-bit float mode. GoXLR does not. It has 192 kilohertz recording. GoXLR does not. It has 3 XLR inputs. GoXLR does not. So the MixPre-3 II can act as a basic audio interface. In that case, the GoXLR does more than that because it has the real-time EQ compression and yada yada, and more of the device mixing in Windows, but they are completely separate products. So that's it. These are your questions answered about the GoXLR, as well as my mini review of the GoXLR Stand. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know if you have any more questions. Join us over on Discord at eposvox.gg/discord, and we'll try to answer them as much as possible. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more stream guides and tech education. Go check out the links in the description below. You'll find a sign-up page for my new course. I am super stoked on it. It's going to be so freaking good. And go follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/eposvox. I'm your stream professor. I'll see you next time.